the 425. Welcome, y'all. I am at Coach Torres _ on Twitter. He is at Coach Miller 06 on Twitter. Coming to y'all live with some Week 9 college football opinions and thoughts. Jeremy, what did you see out there this weekend that had your mind going, man?
Man, Tennessee, they just keep going on a roll. That offense can't seem to be stopped right now, man. They keep blowing through. They blew out Kentucky. It was only close at the beginning of the first quarter when Kentucky scored after Tennessee did, and then they didn't score the rest of the game. And really a tale of two quarterbacks going in completely different directions. Hendon Hooker is the front runner for the Heisman, and with a big week this next week could potentially cement his Heisman status with 3 weeks to go in the season. And really, Will Levis struggled mightily. It's not the first time it's happened this year, and those first-round quarterback grades are not looking good. I know some people had him as high as quarterback 2 this summer, and we're not really going to get into scouting right now. But I'm definitely a lot further down on him than I was this summer, for sure.
Probably further down than either one of us would have thought. I mean, he's a little banged up, so give him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt there. But to more focus on Hooker, who is, like you said, I mean, Hooker won the October Heisman, which is a bigger deal than winning the September Heisman, So he's absolutely entrenched as the number one guy in that race right now. He was number one on my Heisman ballot that I put out on Patreon a couple days ago. I'm sure he's number one for you. I mean, you really can't make a case for anybody else at the moment. So it's going to be whether he can come up big in big moments, which, they got Georgia on the schedule this weekend. So he's going to have to play very well. And if he doesn't, folks are going to remember one way or another.
Yeah.
So, and then Will Levis, you have trending down, like you said. Obviously he's showing that he's certainly got the traits. He has a lot of things that you look for in that guy, but he's not exactly putting it together and progressing in a way that you want to see.
No, I mean, I just don't like what I see from a ball placement standpoint, and his decision making the last few weeks have been kind of questionable, as well as showcased in the 3 interception game against Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Tennessee's got some players. They've got a lot of transfer portal additions on that side of the ball that have helped them over the past 2 years, but I don't think either one of us would consider them a defensive juggernaut by any stretch.
No, not at all. And I've heard a lot of people echo that across, pundits across the landscape say that same thing. Like, I'm not quite ready to put Tennessee number one because that defense is not elite. Can you keep them in a ball game? Sure. I mean, they beat Bama with it, but they're not, Georgia last year, nothing like that. Speaking of Georgia D, they've got Jalen Carter banged up. He hasn't played much in the last month. I watched, them against Florida. He only played on third downs. And news just came down today that they lost Nolan Smith to a torn pec for the year. So, I mean, that's one potential first rounder done for the year, and another one who's not completely healthy heading into what is going to be Georgia's biggest game of the year also.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely Georgia's toughest test of the year. On paper, the teams they've played thus far shouldn't have been an issue for them. I know that we've mentioned on the pod before that they let Georgia State and Missouri hang around a little longer than they should have. Mm-hmm. But this, on paper and in reality, this is the toughest test of their season. And regardless of who they play in the SEC West, I mean, this game determines if they go to the SEC championship game, in my mind, regardless of the other 3 games that they have on the schedule, which I mentioned in my SEC preview released earlier this week.
Mm-hmm. Which you can find on the Patreon as well. It's definitely, the East championship game. And you wouldn't expect either one of those teams to drop a stinker the rest of the way, almost regardless of who they play. I know Tennessee's already played their cupcake, but I'm sure Georgia is playing the Citadel, maybe even next week. So yeah, I think not too much else to talk about in the SEC. Let's see what we got here. The Big 12, man. Big 12 eating itself alive again, in the words of Jay Mills. What do you got going on in the Big 12 down there, man?
It's just, man, with all the injuries that Kansas State had suffered previous and with them not having Adrian Martinez, there was just, even with it being in Manhattan, and I mentioned to you multiple times, like Manhattan is considered a very tough place to play because
Yeah.
teams don't win there often.
Mhm.
But even with all the injuries and even with it being in Manhattan, I just didn't see a way with the way Oklahoma State has played offensively and defensively for them to not come away with a victory there. And they not only did they lose the game, they got absolutely mauled and
Yeah.
manhandled the entire game. They didn't
Boat
score a
race.
point. Spencer Sanders, the offense couldn't move the ball with any type of consistency whatsoever. It was
Mhm.
just a disaster. It was just like a nightmare. And
It
and
was really not fun.
just when you thought that the Big 12 had clarity and there were two consensus top two teams that were going to have a rematch in Arlington. Now all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 teams that are up for grabs fighting with Oak State. TCU
Mhm.
is definitely the team to beat right now.
Yeah, they're the cream of the crop.
It doesn't look, they had their struggles on their own this weekend, but not anytime that West Virginia got that game close, they were able to pull away. They came up with some timely deep passes that led to big touchdowns because West Virginia's secondary was open like Walmart at 12 a.m.,
Yeah,
just
man.
letting
Mile
people
Walmart
go through.
24/7. Yeah, man. It's admission time on my part. I haven't told you this, but you recall we had, a little conversation, a little text back and forth on Saturday about Kansas State, Oklahoma State. And knowing Adrian Martinez was questionable, and likely not to play. And then they had that line where Kansas State was favored by 1.5, Cody. Yeah. And so we bet Okie State, man. We bet Okie State to cover. We bet Okie State to win. And I don't know what happened there. Maybe no one should listen to me on anything I say CFB related, because yeah, man, we put a couple bucks on put a couple units, as Mike Ryan would say, on Okie State. And yeah, man, that one didn't work out. I don't know what happened there. Manhattan happened there. And then I was like, Jeremy, how has Manhattan, Kansas become a tough place to play? And the answer is Bill Snyder.
Yeah, I mean, and he's not even there. It's just the ghost of Bill
Exactly.
Snyder.
Oh, yeah, Bill Snyder. Did you just kill Bill Snyder, dude? Is Bill Snyder still with us?
He's still with us.
Oh, dude, you just killed Bill
That's
Snyder,
a
bro.
fine.
That's $50. That's a big
Yeah,
fine. That's the biggest
that's the
fine. You kill
biggest of
somebody,
fines.
you kill
Yeah.
somebody, you get 50 bones around here. But yeah, I mean, you can kind of see this coming with the Big 12, with there being so many good teams.
Yeah.
It's just like, who are you going to catch on what day? Where are the injuries going to come? Who's going to stay healthy? It certainly does look like TCU is going to be that top dog, but Big 12 is
They
an
could
animal,
drop some
man.
games. Yeah.
They could drop a game to anybody. They could drop that Big 12 title game.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this dates all the way back to the first ever playoff. TCU drops one, and I think they're no
They're
question
done.
gone.
It's over. And if they drop one game, there is no conversation about a Big 12 contender in the playoff game. It's just not happening.
Yeah, unless you
It's
take the
like
other. Go ahead.
And I would probably, as good as TCU has looked this year, if they drop a game with the way the Pac-12 is playing, I might put a one-loss Pac-12 team over a Big 12 team if that scenario just happens to shake it out, especially, and we know because TCU and Baylor got robbed in the 2013 playoff, I believe.
Yeah.
Or was it
14.
the 2014
That's
playoff
that's where I was heading with that. Yeah.
where Ohio State jumped both teams. And it was just kind of one of those things where if it's USC one loss and TCU one loss, the committee's going to take USC all day long. They'll take Oregon all day long.
Yeah, or UCLA, honestly. It
It's
could
just a
be,
bigger name program.
yeah. I'm not exactly sure. The Pac-12 is probably the conference that collectively we're up the least on, just geographically and whatnot. But I feel like there's 3 teams out there with one loss, could end up with one loss, and we're going to end up in some sort of tiebreaker situation with the LA teams and Oregon. So,
Yeah.
all right, what are we going to get into next? Another big game in Big Ten country. We had the Buckeyes traveling to Penn State. It was a noon. I think they striped the stadium instead of their
Yeah, they
traditional
did. It was a
whiteout.
striped. It wasn't their whiteout.
That's the first game at Penn State I can remember during the day that had sunlight since
Yeah.
Harbaugh's first year, since Michigan went there in 2015. It's the last time I remember seeing sunlight in that stadium. It's always overcast in Penn State.
Yeah, it's always
feels that way.
overcast, or it's always a night game.
Or it's a night game,
Usually Penn State plays their big games at night, especially at home.
They're not like Michigan where they'll just play 2 night games. Like they're playing at least half their home games at night, if not more.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have that there. Yeah, what were your takeaways from the game? Obviously, Ohio State struggled a lot until the fourth quarter. JT still learning how to pronounce his last name, so I'm not even going to try. Who played a lot of, from what I recall last year, as he was a top recruit in the country a couple years ago, high 5-star. He's a sophomore right now, but I recall him as a freshman playing with his hand in the dirt quite a bit more. So it looks like Jim Knowles has moved him around, got him out to edge. Kind of looks like Mike Morris in the build there with a guy that could play down and is now out on the edge. And the dude just completely wreaked havoc. I mean, a couple turnovers, couple tutters, like it was nuts.
Yeah, he's got him playing that Leo position. That's that position that he likes to move around and have him standing up, but most of the time he's coming off the edge. And for real, my real takeaway from the Ohio State Penn State game is Manny Diaz crowded the box on early downs, and Ohio State tried to pound the run early, and they had no success with it. Their guards were not getting off they were leaving the double team too early and trying to get to the second level, and it was creating penetration issues. And they really couldn't get the run game going. And it was and Ryan Day abandoned it. I mean, he literally abandoned it until the fourth quarter. And you and me have always had the belief, it goes back to a quote from Bill Parcells where it doesn't matter if you're running the ball well. The rushing attempts is what matters. You need to keep attempting to run the ball. Now, I'm all for the numbers games, and if the numbers games tells you to throw the ball, then you throw the ball. But at the same time, you have to sprinkle in some runs there. And he tried, but it just doesn't look like their guards are as physical as they need to be when it comes to moving the line of scrimmage and creating more opportunities for their running backs, especially after one of their running backs went down early in that game.
Yeah, Mine Williams went down with what I thought at the time was a knee until they really focused in on that hand, and that did some funky stuff. And again, you're thinking, man, that could be an arm even. Still not sure what the prognosis is there. Didn't look good either way. But did you call them a finesse team on Saturday?
I did. I did mention that to you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Might have been a little worked up about it. Like, yeah, but yeah, man, because it was like you were making that point. Like, they just completely abandoned the run. They can't run it when they need to. For as much success as they've had all year, TreVeyon Henderson's a good back. I was watching the game with Cody and, texting you about it. I didn't say anything to you, but TreVeyon Henderson's a little overrated, I think. He's not a guy that's going to go get you that extra yard or create an extra yard. I don't think he breaks too many tackles. If it's there, he might house it. If you give him a little lane, he's going to go. He's
I
not
think
lack of
he's
skill. He's just a
yeah.
little overrated.
I think he's more right now. I think the NFL would consider him more of like a third down back at this moment in time, just based on what we've seen. I'm still a believer in his talent and his potential, and it's a good thing he has another year of eligibility, and maybe he gains some weight and he can get those tough yards,
Right. Yeah. He
and
is only a
maybe
sophomore.
yeah, and maybe he proves down the road later this season that he can get that job done. But for right now, um, Penn State gave Michigan a really good game plan for 3 weeks from now. Not that they were going to probably it looked it looked very similar to Michigan's game plan last year, honestly.
Mhm.
And then lo and behold, for whatever reason, because it's Manny Diaz's scheme, the dam broke at the end of the day,
Right.
and James Franklin, man, like I don't we're coaches and we don't like to bash on coaches too much, but man, if there is a worse coach in college football at late game situations, I would like to meet that man because James Franklin just doesn't get the job done for me, man. Like he constantly and I don't mean maybe he's letting his OC and his DC make the calls, but some of his time management and his just late game decisions on what he's doing on third and fourth down is just so puzzling to me. And it's been that way year in and year out
It's
since
it's
2016.
it's his earned reputation at this point for sure. They they had to deal with what Gus and Joel on the call were, starting to refer to as the Ohio State Avalanche, where at some point that talent just breaks through and they're going to overcome
Yeah.
their scheme and they're going to just take over and do some things. It was definitely coaching malpractice for Manny Diaz to be giving Marvin Harrison Jr. 8 yards of cushion on a 3rd and 6 so he could just run a 2-yard slant because he's going to catch every contested difficult balls like those. They're lucky that they didn't house those. Like,
Yeah.
he's an absolute freak. I'm not looking forward to dealing with him later in the year. That's a problem for everybody, CJ Stroud and Marvin Harrison Jr. But they looked human, and against the team that Michigan absolutely walloped. And there's absolutely a little bit of a difference between playing at home and on the road, but not that much of a difference. So we'll get into that later. We do have some breaking news here, Jeremy. We are, I guess you could say we're recording this live, but we have the CFP's top 25 rankings, brand new, hot off the press. So you want to hear the ESPN's top 10 real quick?
Oh, I'm seeing the update right now. They got Michigan 5th.
Yeah, that's upsetting. Tennessee number
We can
1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, Clemson 4, Michigan 5. We'll just leave it there. Bama, TCU, Oregon. There's no real big surprise after that. I guess you look at Clemson's their ranked games beating Syracuse. They must really like Syracuse and they must really like Wake Forest.
But
So
yeah, and that was one of our talking points for today was the ACC credibility that we've talked about and praised them for not being as bad as they usually are. It took a big hit this weekend. Like Syracuse had, they looked bad this weekend.
yeah, they dropped in my
And
poll big time.
NC State, even without Dennis Leary, 1 point game versus Virginia Tech. Like,
Right.
really?
That's a huge win for Brent Pry and the Hokies.
Well, NC State won, but it was only a 1 point win, and they had to come back. NC State was down the entire game.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the ACC credibility took a hit, and from what we've seen from Clemson, I'm just not offensively. I'm not even with DJU having 2 good games, even though he got pulled. I'm not ready to put them over Michigan, and maybe that's just the homer in me, but I mean,
I don't think a lot of
something's
people
not
aren't going to
adding
agree
up.
with that. Yeah, like nobody's really high on Clemson. No one's buying Clemson being
That
that.
seems like that's like 2 + 2 = 3, man. Like I don't understand.
it's not that this is like really a thing, but it's Clemson bias. They live in the college football playoff, and until I guess, even though we were there last year, I guess until they prove that they're like really not that program, if they're going to be undefeated, they're going to be around. This will take care of itself, obviously. I'm assuming
Yeah.
Michigan and Ohio State went out, and then you have Georgia. Well, with the way they have it set up right here, let's say if Georgia loses to Tennessee, are they going to drop? Like, I mean, from 1 to 3, if Georgia beats Tennessee, they just change places. I mean, not a whole lot
Yeah,
of
I think
movement
so.
there.
It
But
depends on I guess it would depend on if it's a blowout or not. My
if,
college football playoff, we were going to get in the rankings later. Obviously, you've published yours on the, but I was going to have Tennessee 1, and I was going to have Georgia 2 with Ohio State 3, and then Michigan 4,
yeah,
and then Clemson 5th.
yeah,
But I mean, I it's not like Clemson dominated in the last game they played, and they pulled their starting quarterback for a true freshman. So,
exactly. Coming off of a bye week too. But
and I,
it's not like Michigan State is a huge resume booster as a win for Michigan, I guess. So
yeah, and I mean, maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe the red zone struggles was the reason that they put Clemson over us, and that's fine.
they are like
Like
still a
you
top
said,
5 scoring offense in the country. So I don't,
yeah,
whatever.
I think everything will play itself out. And the only other thing that I can think of as we make a smooth transition to the next topic is
Transition.
we gotta we gotta have gotta mention a little bit of shade that Lane Kiffin threw to Jimbo Fisher right after the
Oh
game, like
man,
immediately after.
you love it,
It
man.
was
You just
just
love it.
it was so funny. And not to take anything away, the only other thing I want to mention is that it appears that the Aggies have found a quarterback in true freshman Connor Weigman,
Right.
who is a heralded recruit. He looked very good, but we'll see how that goes the rest of the year. I know there's already a
There's no
controversy on,
salvaging. There's no salvaging
yeah,
this year, man. They could win out, and that
and
kid could
it
throw for
still be a
300
dumpster
yards a
fire.
game. Yeah, and it's still a dumpster fire. I mean, the
Well,
culture
there's
there
already
is a
controversy.
cesspool.
Apparently, Ian Boyd, who we both follow for football
Yeah, you follow Ian Boyd
knowledge,
on Twitter for sure.
he he brought up that there's a controversy brewing a little bit with if Connor Weigman had a concussion with a hit he took in the third quarter and Jimbo putting him back in the game,
Great.
and that got brought up today on Ian Boyd brought that up on Twitter with the press
Today he brought
conference.
that up.
Yes,
Okay,
you'll
so
have
that's
to look
fresh then.
that up. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, like you said, I think Hendon Hooker is number one for the Heisman race.
Mhm.
I number two. Some people could put Blake Corum in that conversation. I've got him at 3 right now, and
Right.
he's probably going to make a trip to New York if he keeps playing the way he's playing.
He's on pace for at the least a trip to New York and potentially a Doak Walker, a Maxwell. We're looking at the Illinois game will say a lot because I saw just randomly on Instagram, I saw Reese Davis's like mid-season All-American team, and his 2 backs were Corum and Chase Brown. So they're going to tee
Yeah,
off in a couple weeks, and we'll we'll cover that game in shortly here on the Michigan pod, but that's going to matter in that little race there. So yeah, let's just jump into. I got the schedule pulled up for next week. Let's watch.
man. Next week is man. It's got a lot of fun matchups. I can't wait to see.
I thought I had it pulled up. I had week 11 pulled up. Here we go. So we're looking at what are we watching on?
Tennessee, Georgia, potentially the game of the year.
Friday. Bro, Friday we have Pac-12 after dark. We have 23 Oregon State, the Beavs, going up to Washington at 10:30. That is not a
That's a
bad ball
good
game.
game. No,
Not a
that's
bad
not a
ball game at
bad
all.
ball game at all.
All
Got
right.
a little action tonight too.
Yes, sir. As we speak, we got Ball State at Kent State kicking off in a couple minutes. We got Buffalo at Ohio. tomorrow we got both of the directional. Well, not both. Let me rephrase that because we have 3 directional schools. Central and Western are going on Wednesday night. All right, Nooners on Saturday. 19 Tulane at Tulsa. That's not really a ball game. In the Big Ten, we got Minnesota at Nebraska, Maryland at Wisconsin, Iowa at Purdue. 3:30. So really not much to speak of at noon, but 3:30. Tennessee, Georgia. All eyes are glued to Tennessee, Georgia at 3:30.
Yeah.
Penn State, Indiana. Sparty at Illinois. And then, Jeremy, we have Bama at LSU in Baton Rouge at 7
Yeah,
p.m.
Brian Kelly tries to get a little bit of revenge on Saban for that butt whooping he took in the national championship game.
Oh, man, that's we talked about Jaden Daniels last week. Obviously, both those teams were on a bye, so we didn't talk about him today yet, really. But that could be a ball game, man. Look out for LSU in that one. The way Jaden Daniels has been playing, if they can carry that over through the bye week, then they can definitely challenge Bama's back end.
And don't at night we have Notre Dame at home versus Clemson as well?
Yes. Yep. So we have the Jessica Smetana Bowl, 7:30. Clemson at Notre Dame. Michigan takes on Rutgers at 7:30. That's going to be a barn burner. Oh, dude, Florida State at the U?
Yeah.
All
they
right.
got the rivalry game this week.
Man, okay, 7:30's crowded then. Damn.
Yeah, I know. Why couldn't one of those games be at noon?
Literally one of these games. Wake Forest at NC State. That's like who's less checked out.
Yeah.
I mean, Wake Forest is still playing good ball. They just lost a couple games. Whereas NC State, I'm not so sure. Cal at USC. And then the Longhorns in Manhattan at night. The Big 12's wacky. So I'm calling the Horns going to go in there. Quinn Ewers is going to just throw dots all over Manhattan, bro. Longhorns
I hope so.
Out of there on top. So
I hope so.
All right, man. You got anything else you want to throw out here for the National before we wrap up?
No, man. Just said it's good to talk some ball, and we're getting, as sad as I am for the last month of college football regular season, I am kind of itching for scout season a little bit. I'm getting that scouting itch real bad. I was just thinking today, I was like, man, it's going to be so fun in mid-April to do like a live mock draft of what we would do here on the pod.
Oh yeah,
for everybody.
Yeah, man, the off-season pods are going to be a lot of fun. We'll be doing live breakdowns, both individually and together, just watching film. I'm not sure what platform that'll be on, maybe Twitch, maybe on here. We'll see. We're going to have to explore that and watch how some other folks do it. You can find the mini breakdowns and little highlight reels over on the TikTok. The Twitter will be fired up a lot more once we're out of season. And then we try and share everything we do on the Facebook, just as kind of like a central location for everybody to find everything. So the Instagram will just kind of mirror what you see on Twitter and TikTok. So whatever you're on, we're on it. So just go ahead and give us a shout. We're gonna wrap up the national pod here. You guys can find us over at the Homer Pod if you're interested in Big Ten and Michigan football. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next week.
Later.
But that's how I am.